evening, 6:31, and we are starting a meeting for Public Health Hospital District Number 4, King County Board of Commissioners, and it's a regular meeting agenda. Will you join me in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
President Norris.
Here.
Vice President Herron.
Here.
Secretary Spikers.
Here.
Commissioner Young. Here. Commissioner Pollard.
Here.
Thank you. Do I hear an approval of the agenda? Going through a motion?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have public comment.
One note, if you could please use your microphones, it's hard to hear.
Oh,
I know that's not an official comment.
thank you.
It's official now. Okay, communications. I don't have anything other than we went to the Rose Bowl and it was very sad because we lost.
Speak for yourself, we.
What?
My team did win their bowl game.
Oh, no. Did you do it? Oh, well, that's good. That's good. Dr. McCall, you next on the agenda.
All right. We do have a report that is in your packets, so that I'll read it to you. So just an update that tonight, the reports that you'll hear from facilities, medical, and finance committees are going to have some details about the strong finish to the year. One thing it won't have in it, though, is on the workday following the medical committee meeting, we learned that we had been awarded honor roll membership from the Department of Health for antimicrobial stewardship work, so I do want to applaud that. And this will be posted to our website once we physically have received that commendation. Over this past week, the hospitals and clinics were not spared the impacts of the windstorms and the power outages. The experience offered yet another opportunity to confirm our capacity to be supported on generator power, and also confirmed our processes for medication safety in our outlying clinics during these power drops. We also, along with Overlay, continue to await documentation from the Department of Health and CMS on the process associated with our rural designation specifically. The solution, though, is nearly complete, but it's not in time for Overlay's January board meeting, which happened yesterday. So the signing of the non-binding LOI is delayed until March. Only because that documentation wasn't in hand. But we're proceeding though. We're going into the due diligence phase that has already begun, so that there won't be any delay to the final agreement construction. Additionally, the Overlake Executive and Board Leadership Team is tentatively scheduled to attend our March work study session so that we can begin developing relationships between the two organizations. Tonight's agenda, just as a quick overview, presents an opportunity for a decision, if the board so chooses, regarding engaging Brian Bauer as our legal counsel for the affiliation process. Brian will soon join this meeting by phone should there be additional questions for him. Additionally, on the agenda, there's also resolutions for modification of the collaborative interlocal agreement, which will allow not only an expansion of the membership of that group, but also flexibility for future growth without further resolutions required at that time. And because Mr. Hauser also represents the collaborative, he'll be able to provide detailed background and details about these changes when we get to that agenda item. And then a final agenda item will relate to the scheduling of the February board meeting, for which I have a conflict because I had a trip already scheduled before I accepted this position. So I will add one additional note that didn't find its way onto my report to you, and that's on a family note, and it has to do with Steve has made the decision that he is going to go ahead and do retirement. So he and his family have come together and identified the very end of June as his retirement time. So we're going to start making the plans for that transition and make it real. So He has graciously
object.
extended.
Yeah.
He has
I like
graciously extended his time, many, many months.
Do we need my smoker? I've got a huge smoker that will smoke about 300 pounds of meat.
All right. How will we use that?
Well, and his going away.
Oh,
Going away.
Party.
I thought that was smoking part of him.
It's got a trailer, it's huge.
Is the designated chef.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just
for-
thanking,
thank
as
you
a
for
gesture of your great work,
Yeah,
I'd be
the
more
only,
than
the
happy
only
to.
catch is Steve's gotta provide the meat.
Well, thank you.
The question is, with a plan like that, what you been smoking?
Okay,
That was good. All right, that is all I have to report.
I think on behalf of the board,
Questions?
yes, just one minute, on behalf of the board, Steve, we're all gonna miss you. You've been really good to work with. I know for David and I particularly. You stepped up to the plate when we really needed your help. Tried the best you could to make it so we all understood.
Oh, you're not leaving till
June.
June.
Is that
It's
in?
not very far
End of
away.
June.
Okay.
And you
Lots of
probably
work to
have,
get
you'll
out of
probably be out of here by mid-June, I guess.
No, I
No.
plan on staying till,
Will you have like then to get
The
like
end of June?
vacation and all that?
I've got some vacation, but actually I'll probably take most of it between now.
Okay.
You can be paid for that vacation at the end, can you not?
Oh, yes, but
Okay, so
I need to practice retirement
Oh.
and take some vacation, guys. Well, thank you for the kind words.
Commissioner Spikers, did you have anything else you want to say?
Well, I've enjoyed working with Steve for the last, I think, 7 years.
No, almost not.
Is it almost 9?
Almost 10, almost 10.
Almost 10. My
Almost
goodness,
10.
Time flies. That's right, I've been here for 12. I thought I was 10. So yeah, that would be 10. And, I think everybody knows we went through a lot of rough spots the first 4 years of his tenure here, I should say. He really stepped up to the plate, as he said. And he's done a lot of great work. And everything I've asked of him, he's always been able to provide quick responses. And I've really enjoyed, being able to get real honest answers from him, which is what we needed as a board, and really appreciate that.
I think too, he's been very patient with all the questions some of us have had. We've had lots of questions and he really tried to educate us.
Thank you.
We should keep in mind that not only is he CFO, but he's the district compliance officer. And he's done a very good job there, and therefore we need to consider that as a qualification for a future CFO with the person be able to serve as compliance officer. That's a very important task.
Good point.
Well said, Commissioner Bowman. All right, moving along then, do we have any other comments for Steve? Let's move on.
Could you say something about the collaborative? We use that term all the time, the collaborative. Could you sketch, are we talking about the Rural Health Collaborative? Okay.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Bowman?
Yeah, is there a hierarchy, or are we just all members, or what organization is in charge, if any?
All of the 15 members are all equal representation on the board that leads the collaborative. So yes, we are one of 15 at that table.
And who chairs the meeting?
There is an elected chair, so from the group, so similar to the way this board operates.
All right, thank you.
Current chair is Eric Knoll from the Mason County Public Hospital District, and that's rotating. They elect officers, they have a set of bylaws, just like you do, in addition to their intergovernmental agreements.
Is there any other questions on public health report? Okay. Our general counsels, Charles Hauser, you're up.
Thank you. And so last meeting, we had talked about taking a straw poll vote. Could you do that? And when I read Robert's Rules of Order, they specifically said that's something you cannot do, and they would say that would be dilatory. And I didn't know what dilatory meant, and I looked it up at that time.
Are there share with us, I
And
hope?
I'm going to share with you. And so tonight, this is dilatory motions, and this is in Robert's Rules of Order, and it's very well defined. It says, a motion is dilatory if it seeks to obstruct or thwart the will of the assembly as clearly indicated by the existing parliamentary situation. It goes on to say that the forms are designed to assist, and even without adopting a rule of the subject, every deliberative assembly has the right to protect itself from the dilatory use of these forms. So in essence, a main motion that it's frivolous, or it's absurd, or it contains no rational proposition is dilatory, and it cannot be introduced. Further example is if it is to obstruct business by appealing a ruling of the chair, or a question about when there cannot be possibly two reasonable opinions, by demanding a division on a vote even when there has been a full vote, the result is clear. By moving to lay on the table for the matter which a special meeting has been called, by constantly raising points of order, appealing the chair's decision, or moving to adjourn again and again and again when nothing has happened to justify such. By use of such tactics, a minority of 2 or 3 members could bring business to a standstill. So that's being dilatory. So finally, it says it's the duty of the presiding officer, which in our case would be Madam President, to prevent members from misusing legitimate forms of motion or abusing the privileges. Whenever the chair becomes convinced that one or more members are repeatedly using parliamentary forms for dilatory purposes, he should, and again, my apologies, Robert Rules of Order always use the pronoun he. It shouldn't one of these days. Hopefully they'll change, but they haven't. He should never adopt such a course merely to speed up the business, but never permit his feelings personal to affect the judgment. If the chair only suspects that a motion is not made in good faith, he should give the maker of the motion the benefit of the doubt. And finally, and in conclusion, the chair should always be courteous and fair, but at the same time, be firm in protecting the assembly from imposition. So now we know what dilatory motions are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any additional questions about it? I think it's covered pretty clearly, but if anybody has a question for our council. Not hearing none, then we will move on. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, we already called to order our meeting. Oh, this is our minutes from the last one. I need, just a minute, gotta get the right page. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Do you want to do a consent agenda for all of these? Approval of minutes December 13th, December 19th, which was a work study, and physician credentialing.
Well, that's how it's presented, so unless we change the agenda, I would move approval of minutes as a consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I would second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. Alrighty, committee reports. Finance committee, you're on first tonight.
All right. So thank you. Well, we had a month that was not surprising from other years for November. We've always seemed to have a little bit of a lag just because of the beginning of the holiday season. And we didn't have too many storms, big storms and injuries. The flu epidemic hopefully won't spread. That has not started yet. We had some overages on some purchase services quite a bit this month. And for the life of me, Steve, I can't remember exactly why. It was just this particular month we had additional purchases.
Yeah.
I thought that's what it was.
It's IT Consulting at the month, and got a, and there was another transportation, we had some patient transportation.
Yes, we had certain patients that needed high transportation costs.
Yeah, and then that happened earlier in the year. We subsequently renegotiated our contract. But we have a couple of really big bills earlier in the year, which led to the year-to-date variance that we have.
Our Medicaid patients was up a little bit more than average, just a hair above one patient in the month, about 1.3 patients in the month. And that has a little bit of a negative effect on cash. speaking of cash, we are, unrestricted cash, we've had a little bit of a lapse here. The trend is going up, but this particular 6-month period, it seems to be down compared to the prior 6 months. And as recall that every 6 months we do a payment.
So we got hit with our cost report payment, and we knew it was coming.
It's usually about every 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's
Big
cost-
one, the big one is in about August or something.
So
Yeah.
that's what depleted the cash, unrestricted cash. Our overall restricted cash is within compliance with all covenants. There's I think we're 90-some days on hand, cash on hand. We're 1.6 versus 1.2 in,
In the debt service coverage.
debt service coverage. One of the positive things that I wanted to point out, well, there's actually more than one. For the year, emergency is about where we thought, just a hair below. Our average daily census is above what we predicted. If you remember that our budget is going to, has not changed from, I think our budget for 2019 is what, 22.5 versus 22.2, which is exactly where we are right now. So, imaging, we've had a little bit of an uptick in imaging, and it's just about back up to the budget. If you remember, we had some MRI issues and some repairs, and so that was substantially below. So we've made up some ground for the year, and it looks like we're going to be about on budget or even above. Endoscopy, we're pretty close to budget, a little bit down. Clinics, we're actually above budget. The one concern I brought up in the meeting, and this is really great because I was able to request that we contact the state trial lawyers, which is the Washington State Association of Justice. I'm a member of it, and it's a win-win. What I suggested, I said, why don't you contact Dr. Woodcock? I said, why don't you contact them and see if they would like a plug for allowing Medicaid patients who many attorneys can't seem to find any kind of health coverage for therapy and physiatrists and some of the other outpatient services. And I know it's almost impossible. Sometimes I have to get people to travel 30, 40 miles to get on somebody that can do it, or get a lien from a chiropractor or some agency that charges about 1.5 times the average, and then they don't accept Medicaid, and the client ends up on the wrong end of it. So they were very welcome to a blurb in the listserv, and I got a couple comments. I forwarded one over to Dr. Woodcock. People love to have a place where the people that don't have a lot of income, that are just they are on Medicaid specifically at 40 or 50 years old or even 30, have a place to go to be able to get proper treatment. So it's a win-win. Hopefully we'll get some folks that will come over here and explore our facilities, and I'll probably put that out about once a year, just so people understand that they have a place to go, at least in the East King County. So,
This is for outpatient Medicaid.
yeah, outpatient Medicaid.
A lot of doctors have really not taking any of their Medicaid, and
No.
how much does that reflect
yeah.
our revenue?
Yeah, well, if we were to get a lot of outpatient Medicaid, that would be a plus for us. We are reimbursed a very satisfactory amount, which is usually quite a bit more than private pay,
Yeah.
and, or at least as good as private pay, I should say. And other hospitals can only charge a fraction, small fraction of Medicaid. took a lot of, nonprofits or private entities, took a lot of Medicaid outpatient. It would be really a losing situation for them if they had a lot of patients. So we're filling that niche, and hopefully that'll be good on the bottom line for us. And the main thing is to be able to provide people that don't have access to proper health care the opportunity to have good health care. That's the big thing. So, anyway, I think that's kind of conclusory at this point. I would make a motion to approve the warrants and payroll taxes.
Oh, yeah, well, just one question on the profit losses. We don't have that up there you're reading.
Okay.
But on this finance committee minutes, just on the profit and loss, operating revenue year-to-date was 2% unfavorable to budget, while operating expenses were 1% favorable to plan. What's
Yeah,
that mean?
well, that means that we were 2% less in revenue and 1% less in our expenses, right?
Yeah.
So even though we've had 2% less revenue, we've actually been able to control our expenses. Now, you can't really
2%,
compare the two.
okay.
You can't really compare the two.
When you say plan, is that the budget?
Budget,
The
Okay.
budget, yeah.
Plan and budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we could have $1 million less in expenses, which would be 1% less. We could have 2% less in revenue, might be like, $500,000. You really can't compare the two, but the fact is we've been able to adjust our expenses with reduction in revenue. And if you recall why we're really close to breaking even, we might be able to break even this year, is the reason why we don't have that, we're not $600,000 as we planned. Remember the 340B didn't take place because the Kroger company was, or no,
Yeah, the Kroger company said no.
which would have probably instituted about another $100,000, $150,000 to revenue. And then we just got accepted to the rural health, which was another 150. So there's $250,000 right there. We should have been above budget right now, or closer to budget, I should say, and above breaking even. But for those two things we did not plan on, that's where we're at. We're very close. We're, $3,000 in the black right now, but that's overall. I mean, our operations, if you look just at operations versus our expenses, we have a positive outflow. So if we were to be able to rid ourselves, we would be in really great shape. We would be making good money. So I just wanted to let you know that not
But we're
everything.
covering our debt, correct?
We're
Yeah,
covering
we're
it.
We're covering the debt.
Oh, yeah, we're covering it.
1.6 over, yeah.
And that helps.
Yep.
We're gonna cover
Our
it.
debt service is well above
Yeah.
our requirements.
Yep.
So, there isn't a lot of negative, it just, the purchase services was kind of a red flag for me to look at. And kind of reviewing where we are in retrospect to our budget, just wanted to let you know as an overview, we're below what our budget was, but we're probably gonna break even.
We'll be close.
I think we've got a better than 50% chance, so. I think we do. So, if it's not, it's gonna be within a few thousand.
I hope so,
We've been taking, the last few months, if you remember, we've been taking more contractual allowances out of revenue on paper. And do you understand? If you don't understand that, we've actually set aside about $50,000 more a month that we're banking that we will be paying back Medicare. So-
Yeah. I remember
So
that.
we
Yeah.
are continuing,
Just in case there's the
Yeah, so-
difference. Yeah.
I I think that, we're gonna probably be the closest to what we probably, to breaking budget or to breaking, in a long time. Probably one of the closest times I've ever been to a budget, so. Anyway, so there you have it, being fiscally responsible. You have any other?
No,
Commissioner Pollard has a question, I believe.
Yeah, I refer to balance sheet, page 2, third sheet from the end of the packet, where it's talking about accrued interest and so forth. Help me to understand, we have here total current liabilities.
Page 1 or page 2?
Page 2.
Page 2. So a small portion up,
Yeah.
okay, yep.
It says here, current liabilities 18 million, and then we have long-term liabilities of 96 million. Then then somehow, I don't know, I guess those are added together, we come up with 115 million total liabilities. And then there's another listing here, it's called total equity and fund balance, and that's 95 million. I don't see how those fit together and what those really are. Like, is our total long-term liability 96 million, or is it 115?
96.
96, that's our long-term debt, our bonds, basically.
Okay, so where do we get the 115 million?
You add the 18,769,000 to the 96 million, and you get 115. That's your total liabilities, which you're going to owe people if you had to settle up all your accounts right now.
Would be 115.
That's if you have all your bonds
Yeah.
today, and then all the stuff that's due within the year.
So in speaking with the public about the total long-term liability of the district, you should use the 96 million
Right.
figure, or
Yes.
is it 100?
96, that's the long-term debt.
All right, thank you.
All right.
so you guys dropped cents.
Of course you do.
We were, since we opened the hospital, we reduced that by about a little over 3 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Three and a half.
99, I remember when I first.
Actually, it's a little more,
Yeah.
we reduced it a little more than that, haven't we, Dave?
So we could thank
About,
them.
It's
5 or
about
6
3 or
million.
4, I think.
Yeah,
it was like
I
100
actually asked,
before.
yeah, I actually asked Steve, because I thought it was 103 million.
Yeah, I think that's what I
I
105
I
actually.
remember that for some reason, 103 million.
We can go back even further and see, but it has gone down. We are paying
Oh,
off
yeah.
our debt
Yeah.
based on our bonds.
I
It's
watched
going
it,
down
I'm
so
always
slowly,
looking out.
have you noticed?
That's the way the bond, it goes down slowly at first, and then you pay less interest and more principal towards the end of your bond.
I know like you know.
Mhm, Exactly.
That's right.
Pay more, then it drops. If you
Yeah.
pay less, then
Yeah.
yes. Same principle.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Commissioner Spikers? Okay, hearing none, we will move on.
Wait a minute. I have a motion.
Oh, you
to-
have, oh, for warrants, yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
I have a motion to approve the warrants as drafted, and we have 2,814,265.53 That is actually not too bad, considering that's looking at, I think we've reduced expenses, because I've seen over 3 million, and on a 2-payment month, it's been over nearly 4 million. So, I'd ask for approval of these warrants.
I'll second it. And I want to add to that, I think our financial situation from 6 years ago is much improved than what it was then. And I don't know if it's because of the new hospital or if it's because staff, and I really think it's because staff has stepped up to the plate and we've all made a lot of changes and sacrifices, everybody in this facility has to try to improve this. So that's my 2 cents worth. Do I hear a motion or a second?
Can we do a second?
Motion? Are we all in favor, say aye? Aye.
Roll call vote, please.
President Norris,
Aye.
Vice President Herron,
Aye.
Secretary Spikers,
Aye.
Commissioner Young,
Aye.
Commissioner Pollard,
No.
Thank you. And moving on.
And we'll, with that vote will now pass.
Yes, the vote passes. Okay, next on the committee reports is medical committee.
Okay, Dr. Whitcup has covered part of this because she said that we are awarded honor roll membership from the Department of Health for antimicrobial stewardship work. And the outcomes we measured over the course of this year from guidelines that have been completely released. The Harvard View Telescope program went live on December 17th. Training is complete. We're still waiting for stroke patients. We know how to do it. There was a mass casualty on I-90 on the winter roads, and we received how many patients? Two in our ER, which is good. Also, we anticipate the launch of UW Pharmacy School multi-year longitudinal rotations in addition to current 4 or 6 week single exposure. So we're gonna have young people, for the most part, getting their feet wet. And I'm gonna, not Mark, we can talk about, but we have on-site overnight CT tech schedule. So if you can, if you need a CT, you can have it tonight in the ER. And I'm gonna ask Dr. Whitcock to explain the Century 7 software tool that's going live tentatively in February.
So, yeah, happy to do that. The Century 7 software tool is something we've been talking about for a number of months. And it is a tool that allows us to kind of lays on top of our EHR and will extract information out of our EHR that has to do with
What's an EHR?
electronic health record.
Oh, okay.
So it'll extract information that has to do with antibiotics, infections, duration of antibiotics, risks for infection, a variety of things such as that, and it allows us to do reporting, reporting both constructing reports as well as reports that we need to do, that we're required to do to CMS and to WISHA and to other entities such as that. The value of this is because it will do the extracting, it will free up staff time. There's a significant amount of staff time right now that goes into doing that reporting. And so this layover will free up that staff time to actually do things that only a person can do, and let the computer and the software do what the computer and the software can do. It feeds very tightly into our antimicrobial stewardship, infection prevention, reduction of healthcare associated infections, all of those things that we have regularly having conversations here in our quality conversations.
Thank you. Okay, we already approved the renewal to courtesy staff. I found it very interesting that every single one of them is teleradiology, which is interesting. And I'm not gonna try and say all the names. Any questions?
And all of them have been, what, 6 years, except for one?
Yeah, yes, they've been with us for quite a while.
For quite a while.
Are there any other questions for medical committee?
Just a clarification.
Commissioner
I'm
Pollard.
just curious as to how the teleradiology works. Now, are these individuals at different hospitals, and how do we communicate with them, and where are they employed, or, who are these people?
Good questions. So you actually have it. They are remote from us, so they're employed by Radia. Radia is a tremendously large.
Right, I know Radia are all of these
All of them.
affiliated with
Yeah,
Radia?
our contract is with Radia.
Okay,
Yeah.
now that helps me understand.
Yeah.
And the reason we contract with Radia is because they are so large, they have specialists, all the radiologists within them are subspecialists. So if we have a CT of the head, it goes to the neuroradiologist. If we have a CT of the chest, it goes to the guy who specializes in chest, on and on.
Where are they headquarters? Radio,
Everett,
yeah, Everett.
yeah, they,
Is that a national organization?
no,
Is it-
Pacific Northwest.
is it- like,
Any other questions for medical committee? We'll move on to facilities. Facilities committee has some extensive things on there that they had. We met on December 17th. When did we meet in January? Did we?
No, we met
No.
to
17th. New business was the elevator repair, and that's when we found out that it was covered under our warranty, and so it was done right away, and I believe it is now working. That's how I got down here. Repair work and maintenance agreement, and no operational compromise of certificate against weight. Winter weather management, Scott shared with us preventative maintenance has been done on all the equipment, snow de-icer. He goes around and checks everything to make sure it's ready in case something happens. The snow plow, the contracts have been confirmed, and staff communication has been sent to be cautious for walking in the parking lot. Reflective signage, that has been designed. It was checked several times from the right lane with good reflectivity. The left lane solar driver lights, though minimally reflective, so they still have to work on that. Vision obscured by electrical boxes and trees will be trimmed back. Scott will explore adding a light since the lights from the left lane will not light. Panorama Housing Project, that's the one next door to us, no issues, they've been keeping the road clean. Blue barks on during the wild, on the bank, and attempted to sharing the road, so he didn't have any complaints about them. Lighting external north parking lot, solar powered lights is not providing adequate lighting, so we're gonna have to add some additional hardwire, and he's obtaining a quote. We have a list, you have a list of the accomplishments of the facilities committee. Also old business, sewer lift station, construction punch list. Walkthrough schedules for 12/20. We reestablished open work list and add details absent in the original report. We will probably need to have contractor to not only represent us in the construction codes, but also to complete any work outside of our capability. We are working with the city of Snoqualmie on this project. Also, we had a representative, I think, this last week, didn't we, that one for facilities from the city council, came in late, I believe. There you are, you snuck up his boot on it too, didn't you?
It's here.
It's got before, yeah, okay. King County Search and Rescue lease revision, Steve Daniel. We're awaiting a quote on work that needs to be done, clarification in the process between the different county departments, and we have no time pressure, no items. Retained an agenda for informational purposes only. DOH survey, Scott said the smoke and fire dampers have been found to not be located where drawn on the architect's drawings. That's a little bit of a problem, and unknown if edits occurred by the construction or review process. Scott will contact the subcontractor for as-built drawings, so I don't know what the result of that is yet. We'll probably find out the next facilities meeting. Making the hospital community gathering, you all have a list of what is being held in our facility during the next week. We have not yet done a committee charter, so we're going to be updating the committee charter and review it in January 2019. See what the changes need to be made in the bylaws to adopt, and I hope that we're adopted in December 13th of 2018 at the board meeting.
We do that. Check the bylaws.
Yeah, but I don't think the committee has looked at it. Public comment, there was none. Next meeting will be Monday, January 28th, 2018 at 8:30 here at the hospital. Are there any questions for either Emma or myself?
I'm good.
You may. Chair recognizes Michael.
I've got 3 questions.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'll do one and then if someone else has one.
Okay.
This sewer lift station, I sort of recall that, but I don't recall why we have to hire a contractor on this. Like, is there some, are we out of compliance on code or what?
The answer is we don't
No.
know.
Yeah, that's what I was.
We turned in paperwork to the city, and they admit they sat on it, so we're having to look at it again to see if there are any items that we have to do repair on. And we don't know, and the city is being very cooperative in working with us on this.
And we give it back to them. I mean, it's back in the,
And you answered, there are no significant differences, and that's what I wanted to hear. You know, there are no significant differences between the two states or anywhere else in the country for that matter. And I'm paraphrasing, so let me know if I'm, each state's district hospital has its own idiosyncrasy. Okay, sorry. However, Washington's Public Hospital District Statute and Interlocal Cooperation Act are not significantly different than other states. And you've worked with on three different projects in rural Washington in the last 12 months. And you reviewed Public Hospitals District Statute and Interlocal Cooperation Act in connection with these agreements for 2 of these projects. It sounds like you do have some specific background. That's what I was looking for in the answer. So I probably didn't ask the question completely. So I appreciate you taking the time to go ahead and answer it in writing for me and for the board. The second question I had, and it's a very lengthy answer, was, and this is good for the record because it is very, very lengthy answer and it seems to be very intricate. Please offer more details about the last several affiliations you have consulted on in substantial ways, size of hospital, circumstances of affiliation, outcomes, and so on. In this question, we wanted to know, have you been involved with something similar to our situation, medium-sized private NFP hospital joining with adequately funded CAH? We also want to know the general paradigms you lean on in the course of affiliations such as this. And Brian went into 4 different affiliations, and he described each of these were involved in critical access hospitals and distressed financial situations, except for one there was a fair financial position, and then there was, 2 of them were in difficulty, and one was in solid and one was fair. How would you rate us by chance? Would we be fair? Probably fair.
I think that would be the case.
Okay. I think 4 years ago we would have been in severe financial distress, but anyway, Brian says that each of the parties are unique cultures and organizations and personalities and administrative teams and boards, and the markets where the parties are located are unique. He selected 4 affiliations, and that's why I said he had 4, 2 in good standing, 1 fair, and 1 in poor standing as far as financial. And he went on to summarize each of these 4 affiliations that he was involved in, and most recently in 2018. There's 2 of them in 2018. 3, I make it 4. There's 3 definitely in 2017-18. So the 3 very most recent affiliations that he's worked on, and that's another good point that I didn't know about. So, and it goes on to say if we're going to be successful, it's important for him to understand our goals, our objectives, and also our needs and limitations, both with our entity and overlays. You've affiliation should ultimately advance the goals, needs, mission, and values of both organizations and the communities. It is also important for the parties to think through, discuss, and negotiate what happens if the affiliation does not work out. Both parties expect the affiliation to be successful and are committed to making it successful. However, because things do not always work out as expected, a comprehensive affiliation and affiliation agreement should address how the affiliation might be unwound if it is unsuccessful. And then he goes on to say, I want to make sure that if there are any other questions, basically, he would love to answer them if there's something that is from another commissioner. This is satisfy my questions that I had, and I appreciate again the opportunity to be able to have this information in making a decision tonight.
Commissioner Herring?
I do have a question. Brian, this is Anna Herring, Commissioner. Proposal, your last proposal, which was related to primary drafter, and we will be the reviewer. How, that was not included, so if we were to become the primary drafter, what would happen? Because I was thinking, if we were the primary drafter, it would look more favorable for us as opposed to the other party. Did you know that Overlake decided to be the primary drafter?
Well, I guess there's two things to consider, maybe three, in that question always. You know, who's gonna be the one that does the initial draft? And Commissioner Spikers, I'm sure is very familiar with that as well. But I mean, if you get to do the initial draft, then obviously you control the whole framework.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to get, and I'm trying to understand. Why is it, what is the difference, whether we do it or they do it? So if we do it according to your proposal, that would be another proposal, that would be a separate. Isn't that included in your entire proposal package?
Yeah, my understanding, and this goes back to my conversation with Tom, when I first met with Tom and Steve and Skip, was that Overlake was going to do the initial draft of the relevant documents. And that's pretty common to have the larger hospital or health system do the initial draft. Ultimately, I worry a little less, or I'm concerned a little less if who does the initial draft in an arrangement like this, because if it's not evenly balanced, if it's not a win-win, the deal usually falls apart. And so, I'm not really concerned about Overlake drafting a document that's one-sided, that's going to just require a ton of revisions. I mean, it always is a negotiating process, because you need to look at, what your goals and objectives are, what your needs, and understand what theirs are as well. It's just that if you're the attorney that's doing the initial draft, it usually takes longer to sit down and draft the document than it takes to review and mark up the document. And so the reason I put that language in the proposal was, I think in a situation like this transaction, as it was described to me, I don't think there's any real advantage to being the initial drafter or disadvantage to being not the drafter and being reviewing. I'm always sensitive. I mean, you can't be pound or penny wise and pound foolish, but I'm always sensitive to cost in transactions like this, because the larger health system usually has more resources, deeper pockets, and so I usually start from the expectation that the smaller hospital is going to want to minimize the cost and expense related to that, So my understanding was that Overlake was gonna do the initial draft. If that changes, it is more time and so more cost.
Yeah, but
I wanted to do.
I think you've been in a firm for 50 years. Wouldn't you have a template for all this and maybe just tweak it if it,
Oh, no.
you don't have a template that's available for this type of?
There there are certain sections. Every sort of, affiliation agreement is gonna have, sections that address kind of the standard 6, 7, areas or issues you wanna address, but there's not a template, because every deal is different. So, yeah, it's definitely not something you can sit down and go, all right, I'm just gonna change the names and the amounts. Yeah, there really isn't any sort of template for a situation like this.
Okay, thank you. The next question I have, I know you, in your proposal, I would like to see a more detailed budget for the SBH, how we are going to be charged per service and other miscellaneous costs. I wasn't sure about the travel cost, not being a local attorney here and you have to travel quite a bit. Is that included? What is your inclusive rate? Or is it in the proposal about travel, food and lodging?
Yeah,
Let's
it's
see it,
actually
okay.
it's actually in the engagement letter. I mean,
Oh, okay.
but
Oh,
I'm
I
happy
had-
to,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I
I'm
haven't,
happy.
oh, okay. I haven't read
No,
this.
no, it's
The lower.
quite all right. I
the
mean,
military.
I'm happy to go over it.
Oh, that's okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm okay, thank you, that's all.
Oh, no problem, thank you.
Commissioner Pollard, would you like to ask some questions?
Yeah,
Are you gonna be, can he do that with his mic? Will he be able to hear us?
There's a microphone down right in front of John. So they
Okay,
can-
okay. You're on.
Okay, this is Commissioner Pollard, Commissioner number 4. I think I was disappointed that you weren't more specific as to the names and locations of the hospitals you worked with. I agree with you that if this thing's gonna work out with Overlake, it's gotta be a win-win situation. And I'll get into that in a moment, but just looking at your response, you said I had worked for 3 affiliation projects for rural Washington hospitals in the last 12 months. I'd like to know who they are. And then as you're discussing more about the affiliation examples, you describe them in general terms. Affiliation 1 is a critical access hospital, it's in a solid financial position, et cetera, but you don't tell us who that is. But what we're really asking for here, as I see it, is references. When you apply for a job, you give the name of your prior employers, where your record there could be checked on. And in all of these examples you give, you don't identify the name of the hospital or the location for that matter. So I feel that this was a waste.
Commissioner Potter, I'll let Brian additionally answer, but when he did his slide presentation, when he was here that night, there were several named hospitals on that, and I'll happily pull that back out for you again.
Please
And-
pull that back out because
Yeah.
I don't correlate that with this response
Yeah,
at all.
and then there are also, the response here was specifically about some experiences, but I'll let Brian answer himself. But then
Commissioner-
there also are some hospitals that we have already vetted him because, so Clickitat is one. Are you familiar with where Clickitat is? Down in
Yes, but when you
Goldendale?
say we, you're talking about the staff.
That's correct.
And so the board did not check them out. The board did not receive proposals from anyone but this proposal. And as a matter of fact, I feel a little uncomfortable with such a large amount of money at stake that we didn't go out with an RFP. It's not required by law, but I think it would have been wise. I'd like to know what are organizations we heard from in terms of providing this service. Only the staff knows. I think the board should know.
I believe that, just may I,
Commissioner
I believe
Spivers.
right when we were beginning these proceedings and Mr. Bauer was introduced, or prior to Mr. Bauer being introduced, the staff did indicate that there were 2 or 3 other firms that were in the running, but were substantially higher in price. And then I think then they compared some of the apples and oranges as far as their experience, and this is where we're at right now.
What I recall hearing was that there were other firms, I don't know, 2 or 3 or how many, but it was never mentioned that they were higher in price. It's just that the others were.
Oh, it was
Which
more.
higher.
But at any rate, that's the kind of information I think the board should have. The decision should not be made at the staff level to entertain only one proposal. Perhaps the board should, maybe even if it had been more expensive, it might have been worth the extra expense. May I continue?
Yes, May Commissioner Pollard.
You mentioned here toward the end, as I say, I'm very disappointed we don't have identification leave, but I understand I'll be getting that. It says here, it's also important for the parties to think through, discuss, and negotiate what happens if the affiliation does not work out. Can you give an example of where you worked on an affiliation process and it did not work out, and what steps you then took to work through that? I'll stand by for a response.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Brad.
Brian?
I'm sorry, Brian.
That's all right. So here's the thing, you know, everybody, and based on how this affiliation has developed, you know, you went through the RFP process that didn't go so well. You had some experience and conversations with Overlake, and it kind of developed organically, and the parties have been talking for some time. And so, I mean, with every affiliation, I go into it with the idea that it's going to be successful, and the parties are committed to making it successful. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time, probably. In this situation, again, the way it's developed, I think the likelihood of success is even greater. But ultimately, I'm here, if I'm engaged, I'm here to look after the best interest of the hospital in the hospital district. You know, my job is to see what's best for the hospital in the hospital district, and you know, with smaller critical access hospitals, the smaller hospital is a little bit more vulnerable, potentially the more vulnerable partner in the relationship. And so I always want to understand, it's like, well, if this doesn't work out, what's it going to look like at the end? I mean, if something, and of course, you know, we talked a little bit last time about some of the concerns that Overlake had about the critical access hospital program and cost-based fee reimbursement going away. Now, I don't think that's very likely. In fact, I think there's almost no possibility of it happening anytime in the near future. But I mean, let's just think it through. If there's a trigger point, and you know, that was discussed, if there's a trigger point where it's like, oh, well, they have an opportunity to unwind, it's like, okay, well, if that's going to happen, we got to make sure, or at least think about what's going to be necessary to make sure that if they exercise their right to get out, how do we make sure that our hospital is in the same or slightly better position than it was before you got into the arrangement? You know, so each community again is is gonna be different. I mean, each hospital, each community, everything is always going to be somewhat different. Now, the one particular one that I can think of, or not that I can think of, but that I am thinking of, was a hospital in Michigan. And they first engaged me because they wanted to get out of one affiliation with a regional small health system or medium-sized health system. It would probably be a little smaller than Overlake, but not much smaller. They wanted to get out of that one, and I successfully helped them unwind that deal. And then they engaged me to help put together an affiliation with a different one, with a different hospital and health system, which is much larger, and probably much larger, well, is larger than Overlake. And so, based on what that affiliation was, which was kind of a first step process, we want to get together and do these particular services. And as I recall, it involved cardiology and neurology. We want to get together and do these services. How do we do these services together? If this goes well, then we may want to look at doing a full integrated affiliation. So you work through that process, but it's like, all right, well, right now we've got some cardiology, some neurology coverage. If we do this deal, those specialists probably will not be involved as they leave. So if this deal comes undone, well then what are we going to do for cardiology and neurology? So we worked out a way in which we integrated the existing cardiology and neurology providers to the extent that we could get as many of them willing to be involved in that, so that if the deal did not work long term and we lost that support from the health system, we still had the neurology and cardiology providers in the community that we had before. So, because sometimes you bring in a health system, they bring in their docs, their services, their managers, and the ones you have then find their way someplace else. And if it doesn't work out, then you're in a worse position. So, there was a question about what paradigm do I lean on or do I use, and I wasn't entirely sure I understood the question, but I got the sense that part of the question at least was this sort of discussion that I'm just having with you. What's the paradigm that I lean on? What do I look for? I want to know what the parties have, and I want to make sure that if we have to get out of this, we're not in a worse position. I mean, you indicated, and I've heard this from Steve before, 4 or 5 years ago, you were in a worse financial situation than you are now. You might have even been considered distressed. Well, you built that up. The last thing you want to have happen is get into something and if something goes sideways and it doesn't work, you don't want to be back in a situation where, you aren't as strong as you are today. So, that, I don't know, Commissioner Pollard, if that answers your question in enough detail, but that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about in that situation. I always get a little nervous because, you start talking about, all right, how do we unwind this if it goes sideways? Then the larger health system sometimes goes, whoa, you're not serious? Are you not serious about this? Why are you wondering about this? And so it's something that you have to keep your eye on and always consider, but you can't make it a big thing, otherwise you run the risk of killing the deal because the other side suddenly believes you're not serious. So it's important to understand, it's important to think through, and I'm guessing it's important to you as a commission. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
So Brian, what I just handed Commissioner Pollard, I had in a file here, was your slide deck that you produced at the last meeting. And in your introduction on page 4, I've tabbed that for Commissioner Pollard. That identifies that you've worked with Evergreen Health, which I think was Evergreen Monroe, Peace Health out of Yakima Valley, Snohomish County Public Hospital District Number 1 with Virginia Mason, the Washington Rural Health Collaborative, and then Klickitat Valley Health out of Goldendale. So that's what we were previously
I
referencing.
realize that, and I have this document at home, but it just says that Hall Render represents current, right now, a number of Washington clients. I wasn't interested that they have some kind of representation of these. I was asking about these examples of successful affiliations. And I don't think we had that Hal Render was involved with, for example, the affiliation of Evergreen Health and Valley of Monroe. I don't believe it was Hall Render that was involved with that. Same thing, Peace Health and these others. The fact that Hall Render worked with, who knows what kind of task, with these organizations is not responsive to my question about who were these examples of organizations where you've come to a successful conclusion on affiliation. Who are they and where are they? And this document does not answer that question.
Brian, did you hear that?
Well, in response to, I think it's page 4 of that PowerPoint, where I list Evergreen, Peak, Snohomish, Washington Rural Health Collaborative, and Klickitat. I have worked with each of those on an affiliation project. Is it the same sort of affiliation project that you're exploring with Overlake? No. There are different types of affiliation projects. The one with the Washington Rural Health Collaborative, for example, was putting together and standing up a clinically integrated network, which is a type of affiliation. It isn't the same sort of affiliation that you're looking at, but I mean, there's a wide range of affiliation. I mean, affiliation runs a spectrum from, hey, we've signed an agreement that says we're affiliated, and sometimes that's all it is. We share naming on our sign, all the way through to a full acquisition, which is a little further down the spectrum than where you are or what you're proposing, because you will retain the ownership of the facility. So each of those on slide 4, I have done some, me personally, in addition to additional work Hall Render has done. But when I selected, because Hall Render is a large firm, we've done a lot of work for a lot of other clients in Washington as well. I identified those 5 as ones that that Hall Render had worked with, as they have, but they're also ones that I have been involved with to one degree or another.
May I continue?
Let me ask you, is there any, Commissioner Young or Commissioner Herron, do you have?
Yeah, I have just a follow-up on my, on page 2 of your engagement letter, in addition to our hourly fees, I see that the hourly fees will not exceed $125,000. However, and the out-of-pocket miscellaneous expenses, just for clarification, are you pretty much going to be working locally? For example, the telecopies, will it be charged local page or long distance $2 page if you're in Michigan? Your travel, will it start from Bellevue or will it start from Michigan? I guess my question here is $125,000, not to incur more than that, but once you put all this together, it could add up, I don't know. So I don't have an idea what I'm looking at in terms of the work costs overall and how long this is going to take. If it's 6 months, 1 year, it's gonna incur day-to-day expenses. So is it gonna start locally or all the costs will be incurred from Michigan to travel to Bellevue to here, if you were to come face-to-face with all of us? I don't know. So this is just my question about whether your rate was inclusive or is it a flat rate? It doesn't look like that's the case here.
Well, with regards to the question on travel,
Yes.
I made a commitment right from the first. We have a Bellevue, Washington office, and so my travel is only billable from Bellevue.
Okay.
I'm not billing you for any travel from Michigan to Bellevue, or, airline, any of that. It is, I'm functioning in this proposal as if I'm living full-time and working out of Bellevue. So it's all based on our Washington office.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate the follow-up.
Commissioner Pollard?
Yeah, referring back to page 4 of your slideshow, once again, I don't understand why you did not, in your responses for examples of affiliation successes, actually identify the hospitals concerned. And so I just feel it's like asking an applicant for employee for references, and the employee says, I worked for a widget manufacturer in New Mexico, and that's all. You need the name of the organization so that if there is a desire to check with that organization and say, is this true? Was there good performance or was there bad performance? The point is, we asked for examples, and you gave us here affiliation number 1, 2, 3, 4, but you didn't identify who they are. So I just feel that that was insufficient response. The other, go ahead. I have another question.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean,
No, go ahead.
there is the additional factor. I mean, I understand what the example or the metaphor that you're using with regards to employment, but there is the difference too that I have an obligation to maintain the confidentiality of my clients and the projects they may be working on, and affiliations are oftentimes particularly sensitive. What's involved, what level of affiliations involved, who else is involved. So I am sensitive to that. If there was specific references to, if you would like specific references to hospital CEOs that I've worked with regards to affiliation, I can provide that. That's not the way I understood the question. So I apologize if I didn't understand it clearly. But I thought the focus was more on the nature of the arrangement and the nature of the hospitals involved, and looking for something similar to what you all are doing. So that's the reason for not giving specific, beyond what I did with that page 4 of the PowerPoint from last time. So, if you want specific references, I'm happy to provide them.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is we certainly, or I certainly don't want to disrupt any ongoing work you're doing with whatever hospital, but where you give us an example and it's a success, it's considered to be a success, that would be a matter of public record, and it's a done deal. It's a completed job, and I'd like to have identified affiliations number 1, 2, 3, 4, and not just a list of references you might give us. You provided some data here that I think is relevant. Just tell us who these people are and where are they located. I might want to contact the media in the area and see what the public reaction was to the affiliation process. There's all sorts of reasons why we might want to look at that. But I have another question on another subject, but there may be other commissioners that have questions.
I just want to comment, RPC 1.9 subsection B, I believe, is the section that says you cannot disclose anything you learned from a past client forever until you die. And I would not want to be in a position to be answering to the Bar Association and losing my license for trying to skate in a gray area at all. When in doubt, don't do it.
Would
And,
you give me that citation? I can write it down.
RPC 1.9.
RPC?
Yeah, RPC.
Rules for professional conduct, it's the rules that the attorneys have to comply with, that's the general section. I think that's pretty precise, that's pretty impressive.
RPC, what's the number?
I think it's 1.9 subsection B. I know it's right about there.
Well, it's just that there was a successful affiliation between Valley of Monroe and Evergreen. And it's all public information, and those that were involved were identified, and I think we should be able to identify these.
Well, why don't you just look and Google it and you'll find all the information out.
Well, I
that's
will
public.
if I can get the name of the hospital.
He just told you, it was Evergreen and.
No, those, if you read his statement on page 4, it says, we have or represents, present tense, a number of hospitals, Evergreen, Peace, and so forth. These may not be at all correlated with these examples where we ask for specific examples.
But they're very recent examples, 2017 and 18, and my guess is they're still smoldering some of the.
Well, who are they? Who are they?
Again, I mean, this is, if you were going to conduct some kind of negotiation with someone and you didn't want certain information coming out, it might hurt or jeopardize the process, you're not going to disclose anything except for what's in public record, so.
That's why you hire an attorney too.
That's right.
That's why you hire them.
You need to understand that attorneys, the biggest thing, I think, I remember the first time I ever heard a lecture from my dean from law school was it was orientation, and he said, those of you that love to gab, you shouldn't be in this field. Period. And he went on to say other things. I'm saying that
asking
it's
these questions is gabbing and
I'm
it's
just
not
saying,
appropriate.
well, it was figure of speech. You gotta keep your secrets of your clients and everything you learn from your clients confidential.
And that's not just in what he's doing, that's in the field in general. My husband does legal counsel and he cannot talk about what he finds or what he does. He cannot say anything to anybody other than the attorney that hires him, and that's it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I respect attorney-client privilege, but once a project has gone through to completion, one should be able to identify who is responsible and so forth. So then it becomes public information. But I have another question if there are no other questions by commissioners.
Commissioner Pollard, you may ask another question.
Okay, it states in your affiliation legal services here that our understanding is Overlake Medical Center Legal Counsel will be primary drafter of the definitive agreement and the lease operating agreement. If Hall Render is to be the primary drafter of the definitive agreement or the lease operating agreement, if Hall Render is asked to provide services in addition to those listed in this lengthy document, we will need to revise our proposal, which means we will need to charge more. It would seem to me.
Yeah, Commissioner Pollard, that was the question I did pose earlier to him.
He already answered.
I'm opposing it a little
Oh.
also again, for clarification.
Motion, ask and answer.
The question is, if we're gonna have a win-win situation, our relationship with Overlake has gotta be a cooperative relationship, not a competitive relationship. And it would seem to me, very frankly, that that could start right now by having Overlake, yes, draft a proposed definitive agreement for us to see, and And that might even satisfy us, and
And
we
that's what's
wouldn't
gonna
even
happen.
need to spend $125,000 on what's being proposed here by Hall Render.
Well,
So,
I guess when you go to court, you have people representing both sides, and I'm not sure I want their legal counsel, because their legal counsel.
we're not going to court, we're
Well,
gonna
no,
cooperate.
for anything, even in a collaborative, in anything you do, you've got legal counsel on both sides that represent those sides and help people come to a agreement in the middle. And
We are going to be cooperative with Overlake, we're going to work together.
But that
It's
takes
in the interest of
attorneys.
Overlake that we have an agreement that's going to satisfy both parties. We don't need to spend $150,000 to get an agreement that Overlake might be willing, they got a bevy of lawyers there, that they might be able to provide to us that would be satisfactory to us.
they can't represent us and represent Overlake at the same time. They have to represent one entity or the other.
Well, they represent Overlake, but what they may be proposing from Overlake's standpoint may be acceptable to us.
It
And
wouldn't
that
be
would
acceptable
fine.
to me unless legal counsel looked at it.
Yes, and we may, at that point, once they have done this work and they've given us a proposal, that we
Well,
find
that's
it's.
that we become the reviewer, we have to review.
Let me finish, please.
Yeah.
And we find that it's satisfactory, that then all we have to do is a relatively little legal checking to make sure if there are any pitfalls. So at any rate, I just think that we're wasting money with this exercise.
Thank you, Commissioner Pollard. Is there any other questions? Brian, I think we've all, Joan, did you want to say anything or ask any questions? Okay,
I have another question.
well,
Yes, and Commissioner Herron touched on this, but I don't think completed it.
okay.
The additional charges like the cost of faxing a page, $2 a fax, that's excessive, and I think we should rein in those costs, and they should be the same as what the state of Washington charges for copying and faxing. Not these excessive fees that are just really outrageous.
Thank you for that input from Commissioner Pollard. Is there any other questions for Brian? We thank you very much for your time. I don't know, do you want to say anything else, Dr. Rico? Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brian.
We really appreciate your candidness and your answers to our questions, and we will have further discussion and be in touch with you.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Everyone have a good evening.
Thank you.
Nice
Take
work.
care. Good night. Bye-bye.
It's probably late over there, 3 hours.
Okay.
Are we under old business still?
I think, I don't, yeah,
I believe so.
I think so,
And I
yes.
would make a motion to approve this.
No, they're on action items.
Well, that's-
what we do.
Okay, all right.
So So the old business is approval of agenda, legal, engage legal counsel for our affiliation. So we've just talked to Brian. I don't know that we have an action right here at this moment. Yeah, it's down below,
Sorry,
so,
I jumped again.
yeah, that's okay, so we'll go down below. New business, we have some resolutions. Do I have a motion? Let's see, approving terms amended and restated in interlocal agreement and approving the terms of the termination of the interlocal agreement. Do you want to address that at all?
This is the one that Skip is probably in the best position to
Summarize.
summarize very
Sure.
quickly and succinctly.
So, Commissioners, you are a member of the Washington Rural Collaborative. And it used to be the Western Washington Rural Health Collaborative, and they changed its name because now, I think at my last count, I think there's 15 members, and 6 of them are in Eastern Washington. So about 40% now are in Eastern Washington, Ellensburg, Goldendale, White Salmon, Davenport, Newport, and Prosser. So it's expanding. Even when I came on board a couple of years ago, I think we were 11 and 13, now we're 15. And so they wanted to change a couple things in the collaborative bylaws. And in order to change the current bylaws and the interlocal government agreement, it has to go out to all members. And that was unwieldy. Each and every time, you had to send a resolution out to each district and get that signature and bring it back and make sure it all got completed. The other piece that was a little bit unwieldy is they had two organizations. You had the collaborative itself, and then you had a public hospital district board, PHD. So the PHD was separate and distinct from the collaborative. And the difference was that the collaborative was a rural public hospital, but also a CAH, a critical access hospital. The public hospital district board was rural public hospitals, but not the CAH designation. And there was just a couple differences in terms of the membership. There were two members that were not in both, in essence, or couldn't be. So this resolution before you today fixes both of those. It terminates and does away with the PHD, the Public Hospital District Board, that were not the CAHs, and it puts them all into one, which is the collaborative, with two classes of members. Class A is the membership that has a CAH designation, and Class B members do not. But they can still both benefit, in most cases, from the purpose. And the purpose is to enter into joint agreements for contracts for healthcare service delivery and payment with public and private entities. And the whole approach is to try and utilize numbers, values, organizations. When you contract with procurement services, when you contract with insurance, malpractice, when you contract with laboratories, and it gets you more bang for your buck. And so this resolution today adopts both the first amended, restated collaborative interlocal agreement, which you are a member of, and it terminates the PHD. Any of the resources from the PHD that you were a member of goes over into the collaborative. So there's less duplication. There's one organization now with two classes of members, and the collaborative will serve all those organizations. You may recall that Holly Greenwood was here and did a presentation on what the collaborative is, how they operate, and how they save you money. And so that still is the intent and purpose. So the board is being asked tonight, when you get to your action items, is to adopt resolution 553-0119 that does those two pieces. It terminates the PHD of which you were a member, transfers the assets over to the collaborative, and amends the Washington Rural Health Collaborative interlocal agreement to allow that to occur and to designate those two classes. And allow, in the future, you wouldn't have to sign this. The board can do it. The collaborative board then could add new members. And there are new members that are wanting to join the collaborative. And again, increasing no bang for your buck. So that's kind of a brief summary. There's, I know, a pretty good stack of material here. I can advise you that the Collaborative Council has reviewed this. I happen to be their general legal counsel. And Brad Bird did most of the drafting on this, and you're familiar with Brad.
You get around, don't you?
To some degree.
Any
When
comments?
you're good, you're good.
Any comments from Steve or from Dr. Rickon that want to say anything else about this?
Say with, both of us are heavily involved with the collaborative. So we can obviously speak very positively of it, but as far as the resolution goes, the efficiencies that will be gained by this new structure are significant, and so many things that happen in the collaborative. You have to be very careful about separating the PhD issues from collaborative core issues, and so this cleans it up. It really cleans it up, and it takes away those necessities of being so fine-lined between the two. Really can blend a lot of those resources, and it really adds just yet another level of efficiency, which is what everything is about in this regard. And one of the things that Brian referenced was the work that he has done with the collaborative, and that's around developing a clinically integrated network. This has an enormous amount to do with how that clinically integrated network can move forward.
How often is it revisited,
What's that?
the change or the amendment? This is the first amendment.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hopefully there's no more.
Oh, that's it.
hopefully not again. And then this will allow, efficiency and more opportunity too.
Yeah.
Yes. And Kim's right, we've both been very involved in the collaborative.
Dr. Whitcup was then approved 2 meetings ago to be added as the member. She is a voting member on the collaborative now as the CEO interim here from this district.
Who was it before that?
It was
Tom.
Parker.
Tom Parker. So,
And I can tell you, because I work with a lot of these hospitals, You are well represented on the board. Dr. Woodcock is very knowledgeable, very experienced, and they really lean on her expertise. Steve Daniel is part of the compliance committee, speaking of which. In fact, we had a compliance committee conference call yesterday. He's on the compliance committee for the collaborative, and he also serves on the CFO committee for the collaborative. So you're well represented and very well respected by the collaborative.
How often do you meet and are these public meetings?
They meet once a month, and they've just adopted a new schedule this year wherein they'll have a in-person meeting every other month, and then a call-in meeting, which is called a Go Live to meeting, but they're doing video and on phone. And so 12 times a year pretty much. A retreat is scheduled in March. They're very active along with these other committees. And the meetings are open to the public to some degree. This is not a public entity because it's a collaborative and it's a interlocal government agreement. But I don't know that they've ever denied anybody. There are executive sessions from time to time. There are a lot of visitors. There are a lot of presenters. So I think if you wanted to attend, I don't think there would be any objection, but I could
I'm not
confirm that.
necessarily suggesting that, I just want to know
Yeah,
how transparent they are and how open they are to the public.
It's quite transparent. They have minutes that you could access. They have a website that you can access. I believe they're very transparent.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's resolution 533019, is that correct? Yes. Yes. All right, the next one is surplus equipment. Can we do these all together? Is this something we can do on resolutions?
I'm sorry, when you get to the action item, if you
Yeah.
wanted to adopt both resolutions, you could do it
All
in
three?
one motion.
Yeah,
Because
that's
they
what
are
I'm
written
asking.
resolutions.
The other resolution is 5540119 for surplus equipment. And then the next one is reschedule February 14th, 2019 proposed dates for Monday, February 11th, or Tuesday, February 12th. And what's the reschedule for? Is it for board meeting? Board meeting. For either, is that she's going to be gone? Dr. Woodcock has a planned vacation, so it would be for us to accommodate her. So those are the dates that she would like us to consider, either Monday or Tuesday, that second week in February. Is there it's just putting it easier and earlier in the week. It's either Monday or Tuesday versus Thursday.
Well, I suggest Tuesday because it's hard to get going on Monday and have a meeting that same night, and, you know.
This is true.
I would agree. Just suggest Tuesday, if that's agreeable with everybody.
Does anybody else have a comment about either day? Would someone like to make a motion?
We do it on the action items though.
Yes, it's under the action item.
Yeah,
The
okay,
action items,
okay.
we don't have-
Action item number 4.
Or,
Yeah.
so we could probably, let's see, what do we have on action? We have public comment first. Do we have any public comment? So, approval and engage, okay, so without any public comment, we have approval to engage legal counsel is on this one action item. Resolution number 5330119, approving terms and amended and restated interlocal agreement, and approving resolution 5330119, all right, I already said, approving terms and termination of interlocal agreement. Resolution 5540119, surplus equipment, and reschedule February 14th. I think we've decided on what day, Tuesday, is the day we'd like to do that. For our meeting.
That's fine.
Do we want to do all these as a whole, or do we want to do
Madam
them?
President, I suggest that you do them individually. The resolutions, because they're in written form, would be easy to move. But to be clear and precise, you have a nice record for your minutes and for your
Okay.
secretary. I think you want to do those 1 through 4.
Then I will go with counsel, legal counsel. Do I have a motion for approval to engage legal counsel for the affiliation?
I make the motion.
Is there any further discussion?
I would
Commissioner
like to just comment that the board has long said that it's committed to deliberation and due process and so forth. I think that board deliberation is needed before we sign a contract for this proposal. Due diligence is called for, is what I'm trying to say. And I don't think that I think our diligence is now due, and we need to look into this further before we sign a contract that's gonna cost, who knows, $125,000 at the least, and it could go to $200,000.
It's not to exceed 125.
Pardon?
Not to exceed 125.
Yes, unless they are asked to do the agreement, and there'll be add-ons, and not counting also the expenses and various other things. We're talking a lot of money here, and due diligence is what we should be engaged in, and I think diligence is now due on this item. So I know you have the votes to approve it, and everybody goes along to get along, but I think that we need to give this further thought and further investigation, and especially when he couldn't answer the questions I had about who are these organizations that you set up as examples. Who are they? We don't know.
Any response, any other?
I do. I just want to make the record very clear that the board, I feel, has used ample diligence. Questions have been asked on 2 separate occasions. Mr. Bauer's been here twice. We've had ample time, approximately 30 days, to think of more questions for him. And we could have submitted additional questions for him to respond to. As far as the information that he supplied to us, he did everything transparently within the bounds of his professional responsibilities. And I don't think you could ask for more information based on his limitations with respect to the rules of professional conduct. And I believe that looking at many rates, $4.45 an hour for this type of expertise, specific expertise, is I believe to be quite a bargain. I charge more if I'm in court per hour, and so I think that this is a deal. So, and I just want to set the record. It could be as low as $77,000, but as much as $125,000. All the expenses are included in that. I just want to make sure the record is very clear.
Commissioner Young, do you have something to say?
Well, you can call for this question, but I need to let Commissioner Hearn speak if she wants. Let me just, again, for the record, my initial thought coming here, because I have some of these questions that I did ask this evening, was perhaps we should, like you suggested, Commissioner Pollard, we're doing our due diligence, and I think we have done that, and I really appreciate Mr. Bauer answering my questions, because I did have some hesitancy about some of the proposal, but I think he answered most of, pretty much, he was specific, he was very candid in the way he was answering my questions. And so I am satisfied now, and I think our due diligence will come when we start the real work. This is where we will either say yay or nay. So that's where our due diligence work. But in terms of engaging a legal counsel, I think it is time related. I mean, time priority for us to move on, move forward.
And I'm going to say, we've used Brad Burke for other things before, and he came and did a presentation on affiliations for the board. And his hourly rate is considerably more. So if, based on what I've heard from Brian, I think that he knows what he's doing. He appears to have a good understanding of what we want, but he's open-minded to hearing. I think he's reasonable, and I think he has enough experience that he should be able to do good things. So that's my 2 cents. So we will take it to a vote.
Roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote. Commissioner Pollard?
Are you calling the roll?
Yep, I'm calling the roll.
No.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Commissioner Spikers?
Yes.
Commissioner Herron?
Yes.
Commissioner Norris? Yes. so that it passes. We will be looking to hire him to help us with our affiliation. Next is Resolution 5530119, approving the terms and amended and restated interlocal agreement and approving the terms and termination of the interlocal agreement.
I make a motion that we adopt resolution number 553-0119.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Next resolution, 5540119, surplus equipment.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. And then reschedule of the February 14th, 2019 date for our board meeting, changing it to Tuesday, February 12th.
I think we have a consensus of February 12th, and if a motion is needed, I so move.
Thank you, Commissioner Pollard. Is there a second?
Second.
The time will be 6:30?
I say so.
That's on our bylaws now. We have to be consistent.
Commissioner Spikers, are you checking?
No, I've already checked, I'm just putting it in my calendar so I don't forget it.
Okay, right now.
There,
All
do the
those in
same.
favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it,
There,
it
make sure I
passes.
have it too. 2019, not 2018.
Yes.
Yes, so that's a special meeting.
Special meeting, so it will be,
Yeah.
will be signed as such.
Yeah.
If you sign as such, you will cancel and provide notice of the February
February
14th being
14th,
canceled.
yes.
Provide notice pursuant to the statutes that Valerie always knows to follow, and they'll provide notice.
Okay, is there anything else that we have, need to discuss with it I may have missed? All right, nothing under other. All right, then the next scheduled meeting will be Tuesday, February 12th will be our next meeting. And to be announced, work, and our work study will be January 23rd, 2019 at 6:30 in this conference room. And I believe that's all. Do I
At
have?
6 o'clock.
At
I
6
move
o'clock?
adjournment.
6:30.
6:30, did that change?
6:30 under the
Yeah.
bylaws now.
It's now in the bylaws. It's so to be consistent,
Okay, well,
rather than 6 o'clock.
all right, well,
Is that better for you?
yeah, no, it's not, but, yeah. Well, we'll see, it's week to week, or month to month for me, whether I can be there the whole time.
It's okay, we'll just,
That's why I wanted 6 p.m., so, Wednesdays.
Are you saying you wanted 6 to 8 p.m.?
Yeah, I did, because
The
there
work
are times
study.
when I have to get out of here by about 7:30.
But of course, it's better for the public that we have one start time for board.
That's fine, I'll just go ahead and I'll ask to be excused if there is a
Sure.
issue.
No
It shouldn't be
problem.
too many times.
No
and it's a work study.
It's a work study, some,
It could be a little
you don't
more
always have to
lenient.
be, you don't always, as work study,
Gotta quit talking.
the board doesn't have to be, the commissioners don't have to be on the work study if there's an urgent need.
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Or you can vote with your feet.
Those that oppose, no opposition. We are adjourned.
Yeah.